Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to the Tri-Valley Nonprofit Alliance's January. Did I do that wrong? No, it's my month program, both sides of the gift. Fundraising lessons from donors and doers. And yes, we truly have two donors and doers with us here today. We're really glad you're here. Let's see, and before we dive in, I want to give a big thank you to Sandia National Laboratories for the generous ongoing support of TVNPA's community programs. That's Michelle Walker Wade from Sandia. And their sponsorship helps us to keep these gatherings accessible and keeps this learning community growing strong. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of your morning to be here to invest in your organization's success and in turn in the strength of our community. We know when you get strengthened, our community does. So we're really glad you're here. And we have a fantastic group in the room. And then, so here's how today is going to flow. We're going to start with the introduction of our guests, and then we'll move into a conversation style format with more like a fireside chat than a formal presentation. And then we'll open it up to Q&A around 11:30 a.m. As you're listening, I encourage you to jot down questions, especially the practical ones. If you're thinking it, chances are someone else is too. Now, I'm going to introduce our guests. And we have some formal introductions that I would like to make so you can know who's in the room. So, Dr. Jay Davis. I worked with Jay at the Hertz Foundation for many years, and he's one of my favorites. So, Dr. Jay Davis is a nuclear physicist trained at the Universities of Texas and Wisconsin. During his 3-decade career at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, he built accelerators for research in nuclear physics, material science, and multiple applications of nuclear analytical techniques. In 1988, Davis founded the Center for Accelerator Mass Spectrometry, the world's most versatile and productive AMS laboratory. When he left the lab to join the Department of Defense in 1998, he was the Associate Director for the Earth and Environmental Sciences. In the national security component of his career, Jay worked to develop techniques for arms control treaties, was an operating member of the Nuclear Counterterrorism Program, and served as an inspector in Iraq in the first Gulf War, having major operation and technical roles in 2 United Nations inspections. He was also shot at in one of those. In 1998, he became the founding director of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. DTRA is a combat support agency and had a staff of 2,000, half military and half civilian, with a budget of $2 billion annually. As director of DTRA, he merged 3 DoD organizations to create DoD's operating and technical focus for dealing with weapons of mass destruction and for all U.S. inspection under arms control treaties. So you can see he's been a really important guy to our country and to our world. Among his honors are Phi Beta Kappa and Junior Fellow of Arts and Sciences at Texas, an Atomic Energy Commission postdoctoral fellowship at Wisconsin, and being twice given the Distinguished Public Service Medal, DoD's highest civilian award. He's a fellow of the American Physical Society and has served on its panel on public affairs. He has chaired the Nuclear and Radiation Studies Board of the National Academy of Sciences. He has served on the Board of Distinguished Advisors for the American Committees on Foreign Affairs and the Institutional Review Board of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. After retirement, he served 6 years as the president of the Hertz Foundation. And Jay has chaired the Board of Directors of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce and on the boards of Innovation Tri-Valley and the Livermore Valley Performing Arts, and he's a past president of the Rotary Club of Livermore. That is the Noon Rotary I'm speaking of. We have a little competition between Rotary clubs. The Noon one's the better one. Married to Mary McIntyre Davis for 62 years. He has 2 grown children and 4 grandchildren. A retired windsurfer, biker, and backcountry skier, he's happily chief sharecropper for a small Livermore vineyard, producing petite Syrah grapes for boutique winemaking under the private label of his lab nickname, Talking Bull. Jay and Mary are now part owners of the winery that processes their grapes. Jay says he's too old to accept board positions, but serves as a donor and strategic advisor to several Livermore-based education and public service foundations. He's been a huge help to me with TVNPA. So that's Jay. And next we have, most of you know, but Marti Sutton. And yeah, Marti has worked for more than 20 years with nonprofits and government agencies. Her career started at the Office of Management and Budget in the Clinton administration. She then proceeded to work at the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. While at the Urban Institute, she tackled issues such as education, welfare reform, and was one of the founders of the National Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy, now called Power to Decide. In 2008, Marti moved to Livermore with her husband and 3 young children, who have apparently grown a little bit, and began volunteering at her children's school. In addition, Marti served on the Las Positas College Foundation Board for 8 years, 4 years as treasurer and 2 years as chairperson. Prior to joining the Human Services Commission, which she still serves on, she served on the Beautification Committee for the City of Livermore. Along with her current role with Human Services Commission, Marti currently serves as the Business Advisory Board for Chico's CSU Chico. And I'm also happy to say that Marti joined the TVNPA Board of Directors in 2021 and currently serves as our board chair. So please help me welcome Jay and Marti. Okay, so thank you for being here with us today. Your perspective on fundraising, what works, what doesn't, and what you've learned along the way gives us all a lot to think about as we head back to our organizations. This is the last page. So we're just gonna go right here. So Jay and Marti, this is for both of you. And we'll start with Marti. And just talk about real quick, can you tell us how you got involved in fundraising?
Okay. So my first fundraiser was at Chico State. I'm a proud alumni, excuse me, at Chico State. I was a business major and I was in a local sorority there. As a local sorority, we did not have a national organization, so we had to raise all of our own funds and do all of our own bookkeeping. And so I became assistant treasurer, and so I had to do the fundraising. They would usually do a taco feed, and then whoever participated in the fundraiser, the proceeds would be divided equally among everybody. Well, I met with this old assistant treasurer who was taking over her position and found out that, first of all, a taco feed is a lot of work. And second of all, she ended up doing most of the work, like cleanup and things like that, because there were people that did not want to do those jobs. So I came in and said, well, we're doing a spaghetti feed because it's a lot easier and it's a lot cheaper. And then not everyone should get paid the same amount of money or earn the same amount of money. So I had people who did cleanup got paid more money. So the pie was not divided equally. So then I wasn't stuck doing all the bad stuff like grocery shopping, cooking, and cleanup. And the people who were the greeters and did the fun things, they got paid less money. And it worked out a lot better, and we made a lot more money, and people were happier, and I was happier because it wasn't a huge lift. And I realized, wow, I'm pretty good at this. And then I went on to the Urban Institute, and I was in charge of the budgets for our grants. So I have like the background. I didn't write the actual grants, but I put together all the budgets, and I put together all the finances when we went back and reported for grants. Then I came here. I did, did a little bit of work with the PTO, helped double the proceeds at the gala. Worked at Las Positas College Foundation. I was, like Kathy said, I was on the board for 8 years. I think 7 of those I headed up the Best of the Best, which is their fundraiser. I've been working with Spectrum for, probably 8 years on their fundraising committee. And now as board chair with TVNPA, I'm helping with Kathy and Juliana do fundraising for us.
Wow. Well, let me start with a word of warning. If you're not aware, Davis is a Welsh name. And the Welsh not only sing like angels, they're poets, and they love to talk. So if I begin to get out of control, Mary, who has heard all of these stories for over 62 years, except for some of the classified ones she'll never get to hear about, and Mary will come up and take my cane over here and lay about me vigorously to get me back under control.
I could do that.
Oh, you can do that. You probably have done that. Yeah, sure. All of my career was spent, inside government organizations, and so fundraising is very different there. When I retired from the lab, I realized I had been from this community for over 30 years, but not in it. And so the obvious thing to do was step up and work for nonprofit organizations. contribute to the community instead of being on an airplane. I found that a lot of fun. I learned a lot of lessons, some embarrassing. Had success at some. And then obviously it's important to become a donor too. So I look at this particular problem from both sides, from how do I go out and ask for money from someone, poorly sometimes, and what are my expectations as a donor? So we'll get through that as we go on. I hope I can keep doing this till I drop over, but it's beginning to look pretty close.
Okay. Let's not do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I worked with Jay when we were doing a lot of that fundraising and learning a lot about the fundraising, and I want to say, tell this story, and I'm like, I do that, I don't touch on them, because we had some pretty big stories out there. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, this is for both of you, and so I'll go to Jay first. From your experience as a board member and fundraiser, can you share a fundraising campaign or big ask that went especially well, and what would you say were the key ingredients that made it successful?
Well, you learn from your mistakes. If you're going to go talk to someone, you better know not just them, which is very important, what might they give so you don't make unrealistic requests. You better know yourself too. From what position are you coming to ask for that? You have to be aware of questions. We once had a public affairs officer at the lab who had a wonderful model for this exchange. He said, you get asked a question and you answer the question. But in praise for answering it, you then get to send a message. And the message is not the party line, it's why is something you do might be important. The classic example Kathy talked about one time is an organization that provides 10,000 meals. Well, that's really great, but what does it do for one person? Okay, and that's the message. You can talk about that. The Pedrosi Foundation is another good example. They give kids scholarships, and I think it was one we funded that Mary and I both really broke into tears when this girl described what she had done as the first in her family to go to college, and said, you know, this money doesn't sound like a lot to you, but it's 600 hours I don't have to work while I'm in school. There's a powerful message. You know, she wrote that for us. So you do that. Now, the fellow who gave me this model said the problem with you technical people is you always want to do question, message, lecture, and take control for an hour. So you have to be pretty careful. But you have to do more and have, you know, a couple of things that are human in the back of your mind. If you're taking a board member with you, the board member better be able to play at that level, but differently. Okay, it's not a matter of coaching, it's just preparing. You have to be prepared.
So wait, tell the story about how with our Hertz Fellows, because we give out graduate fellowships for PhDs in science and engineering, and Jay set up this campaign to recruit 5-year pledges.
Yeah.
And you got over 100 Hertz Fellows to commit to 5-year pledges.
Yeah, so that's $500,000.
Yeah.
No, excuse me, $250,000 each
The
time.
fellowship was, but
But-
you got 100 to commit.
Yeah,
Just,
but the story about the foundation is Mr. Hertz gave money, and this is Hertz Rent-A-Car and a bunch of other things, in the late 50s to set it up. And the board was made of very nice academics and retired military people. And when I took it over, they had been for 40 years happily spending down the principal and doing no fundraising at all. None at all. And so since I'm not a very shy person, I said, you know, this is really great, but you have a business plan to go out of business. So I can write up a really cool 40-year report for you and we'll close it out. Or you can raise money. And I, oh my God, academics, we're poor people, we can't raise money, we don't know how to do that. Every now and then the world gives you a great return. One of the guys most vehement about that, 2 weeks later, his summer home on Martha's Vineyard was featured on the cover of Architectural Digest. So he never ever got away with that line again. But part of a thing, and I'll wander in and out of what you should expect from your board. you should always have a histogram, block diagram, of what your board gives. And you can show that to the board and say, I don't know where you are on this, but you know where you are. And are you comfortable with that? Because I'm going to show it to someone I'm asking. And then what I want you to do is think about, if it looks like that, how next year does it look different? Is it taller and does it move towards the more expensive end? That's much more effective than listing a set of donors, which, forgive me for showing my security background, but a list of donors with money attached is a wonderful shopping list for people that run scams. Kathy reminded me that any good $20 program you can buy can take that name, location, and find real estate holdings, political contributions, other things. So find some way to recognize your donors that doesn't involve publishing what they give.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to piggyback onto bringing your board members in. One of the things that's been challenging for me with TVNPA is that we don't have a gala, we don't have a fundraiser specifically, and so we really have to engage with donors one-on-one, and that's been a huge learning curve for me. I've done a bit of it, but this has been very different for me, and because I am a donor of TVNPA, I can walk in and say, I'm giving X number of dollars, will you join me? And I think if you can cultivate your donors, I think they're just as good as, or even better than a board member, especially your bigger donors. Now, granted, as Jay said, it has to be someone who's comfortable doing that. If you go in there and the person's not comfortable talking to people, it's not gonna work. So you need to have someone who's confident in it. They know your story, they can tell your story, and they can go in there and have the confidence to ask for matching funds, or just to say, hey, I'm in this game too. Will you come in with me? Because as a donor, you don't want to be the only one swimming out in the ocean. You don't want to be out there alone. You want as many people out there swimming with you, because it makes you feel more confident in the organization going forward.
So Jay, this is for you. This is looking back. What are one or two fundraising missteps you would absolutely not repeat, and what do you wish you'd known earlier that would have saved you?
Well, I have to tell you the prize. This is as funny as it can be. You need to know yourself and you need to know the donor very well. The name David Gallus may not ring a bell with you. David tragically died of cancer last year. But David would have been the third winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine this year had he lived. The two young men who got it were both people he developed, developing techniques in companies he started, so it's real tragic. David was chairman of the board when I was president, and we said, well, we've got this money, about $25 million left. Let's go hit a really possible big donor. And so we went after Jim Simons. The name may not ring a bell with you. Jim Simons is probably said to have had an IQ of 250. He's a professor of math at Stony Brook. He dropped out every now and then and did code breaking for the military and came back. And one time he just got tired of being an excellent professor, so he rented an Alderson strip mall and he started Medallion Fund, which was the first hedge fund. And he said, this is not pattern analysis, it's not look at mark to market and stuff like that. We've got to find something in there that lets us make money. Well, Jim ran up to $3 billion pretty quickly. And Medallion, had you all had money to put into it early, you wouldn't be worried about funding. So David and I thought we would go ask him for money. There was some connection to the Hertz Foundation. He maybe had a nephew.
His cousin was a Hertz fellow.
Yeah, a nephew that was a Hertz fellow or something, so we thought that's okay. So David and I went in, and he was an interesting guy. He smoked like a chimney. It was okay because he owned the building he was in, so that took care of that. Never wore socks. Never wore socks, and very penetrating. And David and I made a pretty good pitch, we thought, for $30 million. We never asked for that before, but that would have fixed our problems for a while. And he looked at us for a while and he said, you realize you're asking for more money than you have? So we didn't know ourselves, and we didn't know him very well. The good part of that is his office building was right across the street from the Algonquin Hotel, So we boomed over there and had a couple of martinis in honor of Dorothy Parker, just to recover our sense of self. So you really, really have to know where you're coming from when you make an ask. And that was just grotesquely unreasonable. By the way, he did give us money later, but it wasn't $30 million.
25,000.
25,000, yeah. Not chump change, as we say. To give a partial answer about success at fundraising, though, sort of on my watch and after me, Hertz made the first generation of Hertz Fellows very active in the foundation. They joined the board for the first time. They did more things.
That was a requirement, you're saying?
No, just, they chose to. They chose to, because by that time there were what, 100? 200 fellows, something like that? 1,200, yeah. So enough who had gone out and made real money in the real world and knew what a foundation could do, joined, and the endowment has come up very nicely over the years. You know, it's nice that those that got the benefit give.
It is.
Makes the fundraising sort of easy.
And they recently just got the $30 million gift.
Yeah,
So they-
took a few years. Took a few years. Marty?
So Marty, this is my question for you. From the fundraiser side, what's one thing you think nonprofits should stop doing in fundraising? One thing you think they should start doing, and one thing you think they should continue doing?
So I think the one thing you should stop doing is assuming your donors know you and know how your organization works, that they know what your staff needs are, that they know what professional development is, that they know what overhead is. We've all had these conversations that we're sick of nonprofit staff not being paid the salaries that they deserve. And some of you assume that your donors know this. They don't know that. They don't understand that. They don't understand that you should have competitive wages just as a for-profit. And it's your job to educate them. The next one was, what should you be doing? So I would stop assuming that, first I would stop assuming that donors know your story and know how your organization works and what overhead and all that is. Second is, I would have ambassador programs or people to come in and help people when you have a gala. So one of the things I have found at galas, and I've had friends come to galas, is especially a first-time donor or first-time person coming to a big event, they feel very intimidated. They feel very uncomfortable. And so you're gonna lose that donor, and they may just feel obligated to give you $100 that night when they could have been giving you $1,000. So when I was at the Urban Institute, we had a hit list. So we used to put on events all the time with governors and mayors and members of Congress. And my boss and I would put together a hit list. And so we made sure that the minute that person walked in the door, someone notified me, and then we had a principal go and greet that person. I think table leads are a big asset. Spectrum does this really well, especially with Lisa now on their staff. We have a table lead. Whoever's the leader of that table knows exactly who's sitting at their table. She does like little mini bios on each person, so that then you don't have that awkward conversation. You know who's at the table, and you know who the prospective donors are at the table, so that I can talk to those people. I know sometimes at a big gala that's hard to do because you have so many people there, but you know who's in the room. At least you should know in the room. You should know who's coming to your or who is coming to your gala and who you can hit up. So I think it's really important that people feel comfortable when they walk into your event. And I think I've had a lot of friends that say, I just feel overwhelmed and I'm very uncomfortable. So I think that's a key. And then the other one was, what should you keep doing? Keep telling your story, because you guys are the best storytellers. You do the best job of telling your story. No one else can do it like you can. And just to go back to the ambassador, it does not have to be staff members. I think it's even better if it's other donors, board members, and volunteers. So yeah, and the best thing is keep telling your story.
Well, keep the mic, and you can, this is for both of you, you might keep that. So from your donor perspective, what do you really care about when you're deciding whether to support a nonprofit? What moves you from something that's interesting to I'm actually going to write a check?
So I have 3 things I look at. Obviously, the first one's mission. If I don't believe in your mission, or if it's not something that's in line with what I want to support, I'm not going to support you. Second, leadership. And when I talk leadership, and I'll say the word leadership a lot today, I'm not just talking about EDs, I'm talking about board members, I'm talking about upper management. I have to feel comfortable that you're going to spend the money that I'm giving you efficiently, that you're going to be supporting your staff so that you have staff, don't have a high staff turnover, and that you're planning for the future long term for your organization, so that if I'm giving you money today, you're still going to be there 5 years from now. So leadership is huge for me. And then the third one, volunteers. I think of them as the canary in the coal mine. Because if you don't have good volunteers, or you have a good set of volunteers and they start leaving, they know there's something wrong with the organization. They're behind the scenes. They see what leadership is doing. They see what staff is doing. They know if staff is not being treated right. If staff isn't being treated right, then the volunteers are not being treated right. So I always look at the volunteer base. Like TVNPA, we don't have a huge volunteer base because we don't necessarily need it. But if you come to our events, it's the same people over and over again.
Yeah. So the question is, what keeps you from going, or what gets you over, this looks interesting too, I would like to make a donation to this organization?
Okay, good example or two, Quest and TVNPA. We get behind what they're doing. You can read what the publication says. But Quest gave Mary and me an opportunity, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, to go watch high school students teach grade school students at one of their summer workshops. These kids got small scholarships or fellowships to do it. And just watching about 20 kids in the room, totally entranced, learning to do stuff, sent us home saying, well, we got to give more money to that group. You know, it's compulsory because we see what they're doing. We see what they're doing. Years later, we went out to the work area they have rented now on Las Positas, and got to see the high school students just doing their projects. You know, and this wasn't 30 people walking through a tour. It was just Mary and me with a guide, so we were not intrusive, and they didn't feel like they were on a show, so they opened up to tell us a lot more. Getting a look inside the organization, as you can do it, is really important. Kathy and Marty have an interesting issue with TVNPA because they don't, they don't have people doing stuff that looks like that. But I read proposals for them, which, by the way, is hard because they're well written. These are all worthy organizations. And my comment about TVNPA is they have the knack of finding rocks that should have been turned over, but hadn't been turned over. And every now and then, we used to say this at Hertz, but it's true at TVNPA, if you're reading proposals and you find something that has to be funded, it's okay to lie down on the floor, drum your heels, and hold your breath till you turn blue. And I think the only time I did that was several years ago, when, having read 40 proposals, in the middle of it was one proposal from an organization that gave horseback rides to disadvantaged children. Wonderful thing. The other one was a proposal from a science teacher at Livermore High School to buy a new laser manufacturing machine, because if he had it, he could double the size of his robotics program. And I turned on Kathy's group of, not the people who decided on Kathy and Marty. I said, lasers and horses, this is the Livermore Valley. The hell more than that do you need? This is compulsory, so I'm going to make a scene. I don't make the grant, I don't give the grant, I just want you to know I'm going to make a scene if you don't pick it up. They picked it up, which I thought was very gracious. So getting into the system. The other one is communication. I mean, I talk a lot. Imagine how many times Mary has heard these stories. Well, I had 2,000 men and women spread over 11 time zones. And every time 30 new officers came in, or enlisted men, I would give a 1-hour briefing on what the agency did and how it did it and what the current stress points were. Every time I visited a place, I would give them the status of the agency. And I felt like I was talking continuously. I used to say that, I would walk up to Seventh-day Adventists on the corner and start talking to them about what my agency did. And what interested me is the one critique I got when I left is, he just didn't talk to us enough. I didn't know how to talk to him more, but you cannot over-communicate to the people that benefit from what you give, to the people you want to have give to you, and to even your own board to remind them of where they place.
All right, this is for Marty, not just y'all. Thank you, Jay.
Yep.
Fundraising is rarely about a single moment. It's a series of conversations and thank yous over time. From your perspective as donors and a fundraiser, what kinds of ongoing touches and recognition deepen the relationship, and when do you start to feel like it's transactional or too much?
So I get this question a lot about how to make it less transactional. And I think it's one, building that relationship. I think Jay touched on this before. Know your donor and get to know them, talk to them. Don't be the only one talking. And I think it's important for them to feel, for me, it's important for me to feel part of the organization and part of the mission. And so I think you should be sharing your small wins with them. And so if there's something that happened in your organization, for instance, like someone came to you and said, today was the first day I felt seen and heard, thank you, share that with a donor. It could be a quick email, it could be a quick conversation, but if there's something that put a smile on your face, share that with a donor. I could write checks all day long, and it does nothing for me. What does something for me, what fulfills me, is knowing that I changed someone's life that day. So share the small wins. Also, I don't want a big fancy dinner. I don't want a gift. I don't want anything like that. But I like coffee chats. I like phone calls, just to check in. And when you're not asking for something, I like to have those conversations when you're not asking for something. And I get to know you on a personal basis.
Thank you, Marty. So Jay, and this is for both of you, but we'll go with Jay. So how do repeat gifts differ from first-time gifts? What makes the difference from giving once versus ongoing relationship?
Well, the repeat gift is magic. Hopefully it came without a lot of sales effort. That frees your time to do other things. So you thank them. Kathy will remember this. There was always a day in the spring at Hertz when I sat at the conference table and I signed a letter of thank you to every single donor to the Hertz Foundation, down to those that gave us $5, and sent that off, usually with a personal note on it. I have never met some of those people. I would never meet some of those people, but it just showed that I knew you're there, we care, it's important. Now, there's a famous story in college fundraising about someone who did that for a little old lady that sent them $100 every year for 30 years because her mother had gone to that school or something. And when she died, they got a $3 million gift of her estate. No promises, no asks, didn't know it was coming, just came out of nowhere. So you cannot possibly underestimate that contact. I would say that's also fair for the beneficiaries of your grants. If they've done well, you should write them a note and say, we noticed, we see, thank you very much. Again, my experience is limited to TVA in this regard. If we don't fund them, we encourage them to submit again. And sometimes say, you've submitted the same proposal 3 years in a row. That's,
Change it up.
yeah, it lowers the grade every time because it's a lot of work to read these things. I read 40 proposals typically and rank about 12. So I read a bunch that I'm not ranking, but that gives me the universe of stuff that's coming in. It's a lot of work and it's fun to do. It's very hard, but it's fun to do. So find new ways to thank them.
Miss Marty, how?
So, your one-time donor is a donor. They're just a donor. Your long-term donor is an investor. And that's the way you need to think about it. Whenever I go and meet with an organization that I'm thinking about giving money to, I think of it as an investment. Again, it goes back to leadership. I want to be sure that the leadership is going to continue the organization, that they're paying staff what they need to be paid so that they don't have staff turnover. Again, that the volunteers are happy and that they want to continue to come back. Because don't forget, volunteers, they choose to work with you. And if they're choosing not to work with you, then you have a problem. So it's important that you look at that as investors. Think of it as a for-profit company. You want to know what the long-term plan is. So a one-term donor, great, you bought them a meal. That's important. That is important. As an investor, what's going to happen after you serve that person that meal? How are you going to change that person's life after that meal? And that is so important for me. I want to look at the long-term investment.
Thank you. Okay, so Jay, we'll go to you on this one. This is for both of you, though. What resonates more with you as donors? Impact numbers or individual stories? Do you want to hear we served 10,000 meals, or here's the story of one person who received a meal?
I want to hear both. I want to hear one is the maximum you accomplished, and the other is why did that matter to one person? I forgot to say, it's kind of an ugly story about detaching from an organization as a donor. Mary and I funded a Hertz Fellowship. That was a $50,000 a year gift for 5 years. Big part of what we give. The kids for the Pedrosi Foundation write us a letter every year for the $1,000 scholarships we fund. And they're fun to read. They're hilarious to read. The person who got that fellowship never so much sent us a postcard. And I wasn't even going to look into why that happened. I didn't know any more data than that. Because among other things, it was the job of the foundation to see that some communication was made, and it failed to do that.
Let's go to Marty with that.
I agree with Jay that it is both. Again, if you're talking about your donor wants those stats. Your stats are part of your story. So they are very important that you continue that tell your story with your stats. But if I'm giving $100 and you're telling me that that's going to give someone 5 hot meals for that week, that means a lot to me. My $100 went far. But now you're asking me for $10,000 and you're telling me that that's going to give 500 meals, hot meals. That 500, that number just feels so abstract. It's really hard to comprehend. It doesn't feel as personal. So that's when I want to hear the personal stories. And again, that's when I want to know what's going to happen after they receive that hot meal. How are you going to change that person's life? How are you going to better their life after that meal? And so if I'm really going to invest in you and give you more money, it's so important to know what the next step is.
Okay, so with that in mind, either one, this is for both of you. Well, since you have it, let's ask what stewardship efforts actually influence your next gift? Can you think of a time when a nonprofit did something after your gift that made you want to increase, continue, or stop your support?
So I like thank you notes. I have a good news folder in my email. Even if it's an email, I have a good news folder that for those days when I need it, Thank God my teenage girls are out of the house, so I don't need it as often as I used to. I used to sit in the Trader Joe's parking lot crying all the time. My son, I'm sure, is loving this right now. So I have a good news folder, so I love thank you notes. Like Jay was talking about the Pedrosi students. At Chico State, I helped fund the Professional Attire Fund a few years ago, and I get, twice a year, I get a package of letters from them telling me their story. And I try to go up there twice a year, too, to meet with them, and it really means a lot. So, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Everybody, the answers were great.
So stewardship Please continue or stop.
Okay, so this was an interesting one. So I had a donor I was already giving to an organization, and they had new leadership. It's key, new leadership. And they wanted to raise money for a capital fund. And so they said they wanted to meet with me for lunch. And so we went out to Garay, and they're bringing this new person. And this new person shows up, really dressed up, like smart suit, like overly dressed for the organization, for the meeting. It kind of was a little bit odd. And before I could even have a sip of my iced tea, they said, so we are doing this capital campaign and we need a couple 7-figure donors. Wondering if you would be one of the first 7-figure donors, or if you have a friend that would be, or friends that would be 7-figure donors.
That's the first thing that like
Yes.
Hell of a long time.
Yeah, it was a very awkward lunch after that. And I'll just leave it at that.
I did sort of the reverse of that. One of the people that Manya and I have cultivated here in town is Michael Slesser, who's the president and CEO of Form Factor, which is $1 billion company. Michael is so busy that he's in Livermore maybe 2 nights a week, although now that the electronics business has turned rough, it's more likely to be 2 nights a month because he's all over the world trying to keep their sales going. But I opened the paper one day and here was a hiring ad from Form Factor. And it was absolutely magnificent. Mary and I sat and read it 3 or 4 times and described what they did, what kind of people they wanted, what sort of firm they were. And if I were 25, I would rush out and put my resume in the door. And so just in the hope that this would pay off someday, I called Michael up and I said, I want to take you and her to lunch. And we went to Garay. He said, I'm sorry.
What did you wear?
Not this, okay? But that's just planting a seed. I've never followed up on it because Michael is a very busy guy. He's a funny guy, and Manya will remember this, and I guess I can tell the story now. About the second time we met with him, they were in this awful problem of, do you build a building downtown? You don't know what's going to happen to the land out there. The Eden housing thing is flopping around all over. You don't know what the city is really committed to it. Manya's heard from me so often she's tired of it. I consider that building the wrong building in the wrong place. Other than that, it's a fine design. But Michael looked at us and he looked at their desire to span the valley and beyond, to work from East Oakland to Tracy. And he said, you don't need a building, you need 3 vans to take your stuff. Well, a couple of years later, we funded a van. We're going to fund another van because they're wildly successful. All I ever ask is that I get to have a little consideration of how it's decorated. But and I did pick out the license plate for it, come to think of it. But it's funny how things like that linger for a while. And having he's never contributed to us, may not probably, but he certainly changed my behavior.
Well, what was the van for?
What?
The van, what was the van for?
Oh, it goes to remote sites. You want to come to your high school, we'll pull into your parking lot and we'll do 6 hours of demonstrations and the sort of things we do over
I
here.
get it.
I said we,
Show.
they do over here
Yeah.
at the plaza. The schools will pay for that. They're so delighted to have the thing come. Like Manya can tell you, $2,000 a pop. They'll show up, and they always want more. It wasn't intended as a fundraiser; it was intended as outreach, and it's been wildly successful.
So will they be decorated with your grandkids' faces?
No. Manya can send you pictures, or you. I don't think.
I've seen the van. It's really.
You've seen the van. It's got panels on it, and inside each panel, like a picture frame, arranged at strange angles, are representative things that students would do there. And I said, if you do a second one, keep exactly the same layout of panels, but put different stuff in them, so the 2 vans don't look identical.
Yeah.
So they're separate. I follow gifts, and I'm a real pain in the ass. Sort of got that figured out. Bonnie can tell you that later.
We love this guy, actually. Okay, this is going to be the final question for both of you, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So you might as well start with this, Jay, since you have the mic. So if you could give one piece of advice to the nonprofit leaders and fundraisers in this room about building authentic, long-term relationships with donors, what would it be? If you want to keep thinking, you can give it to Marty.
I think more slowly as I get older. And that's a very hard question. I think recognize that it's a long-term game, and it might be a good discipline to sit down and say, who's the person I'm going to press on this year, because I've seen them 3 or 4 times before, all the way down to the person I've never called on to do it, and spread your efforts among those so you don't get lashed up on failure, because you're going to have a lot of failures. You know, they come for free in this business. But I would kind of look at how you manage your own time in doing that, and I think it's stupid to keep statistics on your success rate. That's because every one is a big win. But I would be careful how I manage my own time. And I'll come back to, I'm really embarrassed, Kathy, now. I'll come back to what Marty said about taking care of the staff. I've been president for about 3 years, and just fell in love with Kathy, because she can do anything, fix anything, make everything work good. And I realized she hadn't finished her college degree. So I said to the board, we're going to pay for the rest of her college degree. And they said, huh? And I said, yeah. Oh, okay. And she did. And I was very, very proud of her. I told you I'd embarrass you.
Yeah. I was grateful.
I think Jake touched on this a bit earlier, but do your homework. Do your homework on your donor. You need to know about them. And when you first sit down, don't just talk about your organization. Ask about them. Ask about what they want, what they're looking for, how they want to see their community. I'll give a quick story. So when Chico State, they used to approach me all the time asking to meet with me, and I was just whatever. This is before I started really giving money, and no one really connected with me. And then this guy Ben reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I actually went through and read his message that he sent me this morning. We read it, and he had read LinkedIn, and he knew I was about education and I was about helping first-generation students. And he reached out to me with that in his note, and I said, okay, let's meet. And we sat down. Turned out I worked for the Clinton administration. He had worked for the Secret Service and the Bush administration. We sat there and talked for probably the first hour just about our lives. And then he pitched me on the Professional Attire Fund. That was perfect, because it was exactly the type of project I wanted to do. I didn't have it in my head. He had it in his head, but he had read everything. He knew. He even said to me when he reached out to me the first time on LinkedIn, he said, I see that you're on the board for the Las Positas College Foundation. I'm at Chico State. I think we have a lot of connections through education. And he started talking about that. He connected with me on a personal level at the very beginning. And I think that is very important, not just with the one-on-ones, but again, going back to your big fundraisers, you need to know who's in the room. And sometimes I feel like I'm going to a gala or a big event and people don't know who's in the room, and that you should. And your volunteers should know, your board members should know, and you should be reaching out and talking to those people. And again, like Spectrum does, doing table leads and things like that. So.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Of course. We haven't talked about a really hard thing, which is, when do you decide to drop someone, not because you're unhappy, but you need more space in your portfolio? Because I can only give away as much money as I earn, plus what I'm willing to take out of retirement accounts, and one tends to not do a whole lot of that. I don't have a good model for that. and how you would say to an organization, I'm not at all unhappy with you, but I need to create space, even if I'm not, saying I'm going to give to X instead of you, because you look at the others. How do you do that? And if you find organizations you like, you're going to have to think about how do you increase your gift, which creates the same problem. So there's a lot of management on your part as a donor to kind of have a plan for this. For a while you get giddy and you write checks and it seems easy, and then you notice you hit your upper limit. There was a point I was going to make about something that always surprises me that organizations miss. This time of year we get lots of great messages saying, if you give before the end of the year, you get this tax break. Nobody ever mentions that into the next year, when you're of a certain age, you have to take a minimum required deduction from your IRA. And you can take $100,000 out and donate that tax-free. So I've suggested they ought to start mentioning what happens in January as well, because it's surprising how many people don't know about that. If you take it out for yourself, I don't know what your tax rate is, but you're going to lose 25 to 35% of it at least to taxes. In this case, you can give $100,000.
And that's usually done in the
What?
first quarter, that's usually done in the beginning of the year.
Oh, well, they tell you at the start of the year how much you have to take. You can give it any time during the year.
Okay.
There's no rush. It's just the window opens on the 1st of January.
Well, thank you. Now we're going to open it up for questions and answers. Okay, so go ahead and start.
All right, so I, as a donor, there's about a dozen organizations I donate to. Each month, one of them gets my donation for the month. Some of those organizations are very good. Others will send me, oh, you gave X dollars. How about doubling your gift, doing it, during the year? And I get badgered every 2 or 3 months, and it really feels like badgering. Do you have any?
It is badgering.
Do you have any thoughts about how often, as a repeat, if you have repeat donors, how often do you solicit them for additional donations, or do you sort of respect that they have a donation plan? Because not everybody does have a donation plan. And this comes to the discussion about transactional and authenticity in your relations with them.
Well, I'd be pretty blunt. I would send them a nice letter that says, I make the decisions on my portfolio once a year. I've made it for you. I don't need a letter once a quarter. Try me in January. It's as soft a no as I can think of, I'm not divorcing you, but no romance on this one.
And I would say to the nonprofits out there, if you have a repeat donor, you should not be badgering them. You should be reaching out to them. You should be thanking them. I love a personal handwritten note. I'm not a number. What you're getting is you're just a number to them. And so that organization needs to do a better job of seeing, because your $100 donation is important to them, because they know because it's reoccurring. So they need to do a better job.
And to your point, it's a national organization that does that, as opposed to some of the more, like my alumni association. They actually had one of the VPs of it's like, I'm going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area. How about we get together for a chat? No solicitation. And I said, what's up with this? She said, we're in it for the long haul. Jay, to your example about this woman giving $3 million in her will, I mean, that's basically what they said is, we're interested in, we like you as a repeat donor, but we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah, and that's
the difference between the
honestly,
small organizations.
that's why I don't give to national organizations anymore. I give to local. I want to make a difference in my community.
And that was kind of the best advice I ever got, which is like, if you give $1,000 to a national organization, they don't care. If you give $1,000 to the local, science club for the high school, that's like 1/10 of their budget.
Yeah.
That's a big impact.
Thank you. Nicole, I keep calling you. Sharon, you have a question?
Yes, I had two. The first one is, what was the platform, Jay, that you said, I'm giving blah, blah, and who's with me? And was it a large group, or was it a one-on? I thought at the beginning.
I think that was me.
Was that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean So
I guess, it sounded appealing, and I'm struggling with you have someone who's already being generous with you, and it feels, just personally to me, like, how do you make it not sound greedy, or like, that's not enough, or you don't appreciate
No,
if you ask for more?
I disagree with that. From my perspective, I would not feel that way. Yeah, I don't, like I said, as donors, we don't want to be out here swimming by ourselves. We want other donors in the water with us. And so there's been other organizations in here that I've given money to, and I said, go tell so-and-so that I gave you this money and see if they'll match it. Kathy and I have sat down with donors and said, okay, Marty's giving X number of dollars, will you join us? And to me, I want people to use my donation to make it better. I think matching programs are great.
But so as a nonprofit, a local nonprofit, we don't have staff, we're all volunteers, 100 volunteers. How do I take a donor who's giving me $5,000 a year, or I'm just trying to imagine.
So you sit down with them, go out to coffee with them, get to know them. It has to be somebody you have to have a relationship with. And it has to be someone that you can put in front of another person, because some people aren't comfortable with that. I'm comfortable doing it. But there are people that are not comfortable doing that. I'm going to use Jay as another example. Jay actually, for TVNPA, for his birthday, he brought a bunch of friends in as to celebrate his birthday, and Kathy and I were able to give a pitch to them. And so it was, it was a donor. Jay's one of our donors.
And you as a matching.
And me, and myself as a donor. We were able to come in and say, hey, we're donating. Would you like to be a part of this? And I think they will do that. You need to have that conversation with the donor. You can't just, and I'm not saying, and it may not happen in one meeting, having this conversation with that donor, but you can plant the seed and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you think that this is something that you would like to do? Would you like to join me in this? And I bet they'll say yes, because I don't want to be out here just funding TVNPA by myself. I can't do it.
Yeah. And if they like you enough to make that significant donation, they probably like you enough to help you get more as well.
Now and I will say, if they're not comfortable with it, you may have to coach them a bit. You can make sure that they have a talking point. You're gonna have to work with them. It may not be, if I'm pretty comfortable going in, I always say, if someone opens the door, I'll walk in and ask.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years,
Yeah.
so yes, I will talk to anybody.
Yeah.
So you don't think it's a valid concern then, that people are going to feel unappreciated?
No.
And I know it's also about knowing your donor, and do they have more to give? Yeah, okay, thank you.
The most unused form of speech in English is the subjunctive. It would be fine to say, I have given you this amount. Were I to give you more, how would you use it? It's not a
You
problem.
say that as a donor.
No, as the person writing, say that to a donor. We appreciate what you've given us. This is what we've done with this. Were I to give you more, how would you use that?
Okay, that's good.
It'd be easier in German or French. They have two subjunctives. So a lot of tuning you could do there, but English you're stuck with one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Carol?
The turnover, when you were talking about somebody from one of your big donors that you had lunch with, and it was a new person, I thought I heard. How do you deal with turnover of donors and organizations when you're working on continuity?
Let me be specific. So there's been a couple of times where I have ghosted. I think this is one of the questions, ghosted an organization. Both times was because of leadership changes. So you're talking about donor?
Yeah, I think if it's a company or an organization and there's turnover of the people that are in charge of making decisions.
Oh, yes. Well, that's a whole nother animal. That's frustrating. I know Spectrum's been going through this a lot. TVNPA has been going through that a lot with a couple of our organizations. You just have to be persistent. I think also going to your board, going to your volunteers, going into your community, talking to other nonprofits and going, hey, did you notice this person just moved? Do you have a relationship with the new person, and help them? I'm all about collaboration, as Melanie stated, we'll say we're not competitors, we're all in this together, we're all working together. So I think I understand your frustration. I don't really have a specific way to say that other than talking to other people in the community and seeing if there's a way that you can get in that door with the new person.
And invite them to events too.
Yeah.
Look out, I'm gonna start telling stories.
Yes, of course.
Oh, that worked, didn't it?
Now, I have a question about when individuals pledge, they'll make a donation early on and then they don't follow through with that. How to handle that? How to handle that efficiently? And I guess it's building the relationship is what it sounds like. But people keep talking about in the current climate, or people aren't donating the way that they did in the past few years. I'm just unsure of that. So I've just got that question about how to do that follow through so they're willing to make the donation that they initially pledged.
I think all you're stuck with is writing a very polite letter. Figure out how overdue they are. Don't mention that, but figure out how overdue they are. And say it's been some time since you made, the next payment on your donation. If that's a problem for you, that's okay. Or did you just forget? That's as strong as you can be in that position.
Well, so I will say we were talking about this at our executive director roundtable just on Tuesday. And it also depends on the pledge. So if it's a significant pledge that's been promised over a period of time and is going to impact your operations, you can sue them. And I've seen that actually can happen. With the Hertz Foundation, ours were pledges, non-binding pledges, and we made that clear. And we had one significant donor who had made a pledge that couldn't make it, but he reached out and said things had shifted for him, and it was going to be a little while, and he did get back on track a couple of years later. But if they're $100 a year or $1,000 in your organization, you can operate without it. It's better to keep the relationship.
But still with the polite letter.
With a polite letter, a ping,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would even, after you do the polite letter, I would just reach out to them and just ask, like maybe it was a shift in something you did that they didn't like and that's a learning experience for you, or maybe their circumstances changed. So you kind of need to know, it's like dating, right? You need to know if it's you or if it's them,
Yeah.
Not about me,
So I just, Jay talked about the VAMP request, and I just wanted to add a little bit, because part of what we're talking about is authenticity, and Jay and I, sort of scientists and engineers, numbers, but people have a very visceral, emotional reaction when they see the van, which is Quest is a legitimate operation, as opposed to a bunch of people throwing stuff in the back of their car and showing up. And so if you think about repeat donors, as a repeat donor, would you rather give to an organization you're confident is going to be here in 5 or 10 years, or one that may just disappear when the handful of volunteers with their station wagon, decide to move on?
That's the difference between a donor and an investor.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so having the van is something that really makes us appeal to the investors who want a long-term relationship with an organization that is aligned with their values.
Another thing that's very, very important is, oh Lord, pay attention to your volunteers. Quest's most recent piece on the web had a solicitation for people to become volunteers to help teach over here and teach in other places. And it was just magnificent. It explained why you were needed, how you would be trained, what you would do, with whom you would work. I mean, if I were 45, I'd sign up. But one problem about volunteer organizations is you can run out of people that work for free for you. And I'm familiar with that in Rotary. You really got to be careful about how you nurture and lead your volunteers.
Anybody else?
So I'm with the Realtors Association or Foundation, and it seems that for our fundraisers, we're really just pulling from our membership. It just seems like the same people year after year, which is great, really kept the repeat donors, but do you have any advice for diversifying your kind of donor pool and how to kind of branch out?
I think you can have your donor pool invite friends and other people into the mix. So, say your members, you pay full price, but you can bring a guest for 50% off just to kind of build them, bring them in. And then you can start, building relationships that way. I always tell Kathy with TVNPA, you build everything brick by brick. And so it will take time, but I think that's the best way to do. And, come to TVNPA events and announce your events. That helps too. So.
Do you mind if I piggyback on that? When you're, and this could be for either of you, when you're looking at, say, a new organization that you might want to fund, how important is it, because this has changed a lot, particularly since the pandemic, how important is it that they have some sort of, it could be high profile or not, event fundraiser where you might get, more recognition for your name or anything like that? Is that important?
I could care
as a donor?
less.
Okay, that's good.
I could care less. I do think, I go to a lot of galas, and I've kind of, Kathy and I have had this conversation about whether it's worth, the big galas are worth it. But I had an ED say to me, it's the only time I have 300 people listening to every word I say, and that's how I get my message out. So for a lot of people, the galas are fundraisers, but they're also a marketing tool, and they're a great way to bring in new people. But if you don't have I really don't care. I don't necessarily want the recognition. The reason I will have my name on things is because I know that sometimes people who know me will then donate, and I can be in that donor to donor motivation. But other than that, yeah.
Do you think you're unique in that way, or do you think most donors don't care about the recognition?
I think it depends on the donor. We have, I know a couple of donors that they like their names in lights.
Mm-hmm.
There's some,
Okay.
I think it just depends. Again, do your homework.
Do your homework.
Yeah.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
This is a fairy tale. It's not from the real world.
Oh.
It involves getting money from the federal government. Fortunately, you almost all were spared that. When I was director of DITRA, I was up at the National Security Agency in Maryland, the no such agency, in the director's office, and it's kind of like two dogs circling each other. You know how that ends. Not sure, why are you here? Why am I here? Not sure. And all of a sudden, his secretary and his military aide come booming in and say, we don't know what's happened, but the Secretary of Defense's office is called, and Dr. Davis needs to be in that office in 40 minutes. So we've opened all the gates and brought his car and driver inside. Okay. So I go booming down the freeway, get to the Pentagon, go to the Secretary of Defense's office, and it turns out that some sort of unknown threat has appeared, and I can't tell you much about it because it's one that's sensitive to the government, but involved nuclear stuff. And I'm sort of the only nuclear bug they trust, which is a little scary in itself if you think about that. And they described the problem. I said, yeah, I know, I'll solve that. Went back to the Pentagon and walked into the Deputy Secretary's office. And the Deputy Secretary was John Hamre, Dr. John Hamre, who had been the principal person recruiting me to come to Washington in the first place. I hadn't screwed up much. So we had very good relations. I said, John, I need $25 million right now. I want to tackle a problem that I have no idea that I can solve. I said, no problem. So also there's some problems with it. The only two organizations that can work on it are Livermore and Los Alamos, both run by the University of California. You have borrowed me from the University of California. So I need a letter in my personnel file that says, all things having to do with conflict of interest have been taken care of. So it's not a problem. Here's a bag, figuratively. Go talk to him. So I flew to first Los Alamos and then to Livermore. It's amazing the attention you get when you walk into the virtual bag of $25 million, even to a lab with $1 billion budget. And I got all the weapons guys in one room at each lab, but separately. I said, okay, here's the problem. This is not a research project. This is a tasking. And this tasking comes from the President of the United States. Can I make it any clearer than that? No. okay, I'm gonna give you half this money, and I'm gonna come back in 40 days. And if you've done a good job, that's fine. If you haven't, I'll take away the rest and give it to the other lab. It's a tasking, it's not research. God, it worked like a charm. It's just amazing how motivated they were. Now, of course, the people above them in the lab were kind of honked off because I'd stolen all their good people to work a problem, but we worked the problem adequately and it went away. But raising federal money is based on personal trust of me alone, nothing else, and reputation back into the community. So every now and then maybe you get one of those in a lifetime. They sure felt good.
Wow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have advice on how to reach out to more elderly donors? Because like in this high, like online world.
What the hell do you mean?
I'm just thinking of my mother-in-law.
You can answer this
loves
question.
to give donations. It's like she hears a heartwarming story, she'll send a check, but she's not on Instagram. She's lost in her email. She has to hear the story verbally from someone, but she's always in her home, like by herself. Like, how do we reach out to those kind of people
Well,
that?
first, don't ever put the words "estate gift" in any of your communications. I will not name the universities I went to that make that mistake. You know,
Like
you
mailers
could-
or like?
if the person's near, offer to come. Could I come visit you? It's a commitment of your time. But if the person is near and matters, if you have any third contact with them, if there's somebody not on your board, somebody who would go with you, not necessarily a donor, but just somebody that eases the social interaction with them. You know, with old people, you're competing with the amount of money we want to give to our grandkids. And that's not a small thing, because God knows what world they'll live in. And that's not a thing I would have said 25 years ago. It's a
That's
thing
the
I,
same as my mother-in-law too, but she's always, and same with my mom, it's like, oh, I heard this story, I want to give a donation, it's like, these kids are struggling, and it's like, if we can reach out to more people that they want to give, they just don't know where to give.
well, you can always say start small. Start the habit.
I think mailing is a good idea though, too. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
and
I've
pictures.
just been really wondering about that. Thank you.
Like Mary, for instance, I know that you like to give to kitties, right? And doggies?
Oh, Lord, yes.
And you're not on social media, right? So how do people get in contact with you if they want?
Associations, bunnies and keys.
Okay.
And they come in the mail all the time, so can't say that they're not visible.
Yeah. So it's coming through the mail.
And there's some that repeats, you know, like best friends. Yeah. So we just got for free. That's maybe better answer.
I think your point on the R&D is so important. I think there are so many people, this might speak to your, your question, is I think there are so many people that still don't understand, for whatever reason, it's the whole R&D process, and yet have money and the wherewithal to maybe better utilize it. And I do think that it's partially an education. Interesting, I wouldn't have thought that, but it's come to my attention most recently of different people. So I think what you say is so important.
Well, Sally and the Lab Foundation hit the education nail pretty firmly, because what we fund there are fellowships for kids to come spend either a summer at the lab or a year at the lab and work on a research project. And they pleasingly jump across all the disciplinary lines when they're there. In fact, we're going to have at some point a meeting with the Hertz Foundation to see if some of these kids couple into us, which ought to be very interesting. Couple into them. What did I say? Yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, hi, Marty, you said when people attend galas, maybe it's the first time. You said they always feel really uncomfortable. Why do they feel uncomfortable? And what's the best way to help them feel comfortable? Is it things you do before or at or after?
I think it's all three. So I think people are shy. I have a couple of friends that, you know, they're not extroverted. And I consider myself an introvert, but I feel comfortable in these type of settings. And they get in there, and especially if it's a huge event, it's overwhelming. And if you haven't really attended a lot of these, you're like, where do I go? Where do I sit? And then you have to sit with a bunch of strangers at a table. It's like, you know, you're in kindergarten again, you know? It's just, it's uncomfortable. So I think one of the things that Spectrum does, which I know for Big Galas, this may not be, theirs is a smaller event, but they have someone the week of the event call and say, hey, just checking in on you, or you're coming, want to let you know it's outside, these are, you know, careful what shoes you wear, like the weather, kind of checks in with them, and those are volunteers that are doing that. That's such a nice touch, and I get a lot of people, I even have the mayor say to me about how nice it was that they did that. Then they have the leads at the table, so I know exactly who's at my table, and, you know, if they've donated before or not. And then I also get the list of people that are attending the event, so that when people walk in, we're able to greet those people and we know who they are, and especially if they're a first-time person coming in, the attendee, that we can show them, hey, over here is the silent auction, and you know, most people know how the silent auction works, but some people don't. You know, so just kind of like be able to make sure that they feel warm and comfortable, and then follow up afterwards with a thank you note. Personalized thank you notes are really big, and maybe even a phone call.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I think we're like running out of time, so I'm gonna put my other hat on, step over here. All right, so, all right, so again, thank you, Marty and Jay, for today.